Oh, Canada, you stand on guard for incredible racing year after year. Welcome back to the 305K. We're here to debrief the Canadian Grand Prix, which I think we would both agree is the race of the year to this point. I mean, it's only the fifth race,
Absolutely.
but I mean,
Well,
we
it's going to
we
be
had a
hard to
little,
beat.
yeah, it's gonna be hard to beat. We had fantastic racing everywhere. I mean, we had the two 1-2 in the championship being Antonelli and Russell have like a 30-lap battle for
Dogfight, yeah.
first dogfight. We had a typical McLaren blunder, which just seems to be it's just not their year so far. It's pretty brutal to watch.
Uh-huh. Lewis turning back the clock,
Yeah.
cheeky few DNFs. Lando DNFing couldn't have been better. It was a great race. It's going to be hard to
Mhm.
beat for the entire year, I think. Um,
Yeah.
it does give me hope because these top two, like last year, I think that they're two very good, capable drivers. I wasn't sure how much we were actually going to see a dogfight. And last year, I don't actually think we saw full gloves off racing between those two. There was a few instances. Austria was one of them. A little bit in Canada, but not even, more than Lando just driving to the back of Oscar. That was
Yeah.
30 laps of pretty just raw fighting.
Yeah.
Pause. Like they were going at it for 30 for 30 laps, like pretty much unbridled, just going at each other. It was
Mhm.
unbelievable.
Yeah, there were definitely some intense moves in there, but there wasn't one where, well, there was maybe one or two that was like
Yeah,
maybe a bit over the line, but none of them felt like too
egregious and aggressive.
aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just like some of the moves that were made and like them going off track. It's just a little bit of a product of good hard racing that you don't
Yeah.
see a ton of anymore. It feels like at times. It was a very, very, very good fight, but it ends with a Russell mechanical failure after he was having a great weekend up to that point. I mean, he took sprint
Yeah.
pole, he won the sprint, and then he took pole for the race. I mean, he was really flying this weekend, and then all of a sudden, here comes Kimi Antonelli, and he wins the race again.
Yeah, well, and I also think it's important to note that it wasn't just the Grand Prix, it was the sprint too, where they were going at each other. And I think part of that was that the sprint kind of set the tone for the race. Because obviously Kimi not happy with Russell for the move that he did, or excuse me, Kimi goes for that outside move into turn one, which is very hard to pull off. And Russell gives him no breathing room. I thought forced him off the track. FIA didn't even investigate it, which I think is a little bit of like very questionable. Obviously, it's inter-team fighting, so they usually don't get involved as much in that kind
Yeah.
of thing. But to me, I actually thought Kimi had the right to that space, and George, lifted off the brake early enough where he just was going to push him onto the grass.
Mhm.
And Kimi was very much on the radio, maybe too much on the
Yeah.
radio,
Yeah.
complaining.
Toto, I mean,
And then I
Toto
think
said
that,
just keep it in the like off
mhm.
the radio.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it sounded like a teenager. I'm acting as if I'm not also a teenager, but it felt like a teenager on the radio, just kind of complaining.
Yeah.
But I really think that set Kimmy off. I think Kimmy's been very reserved this year in terms of his moves. Obviously, he's been unbelievable and he's been
And first
very
most of the
strong.
time.
Yeah, but I think he hasn't really had as much aggression as we saw from him this weekend. And
Yeah.
in the race, he was going for a lot of moves and he was pulling off a lot of them. But he was going for some moves that he had no right going for. You know what I mean? Just to
Yeah.
test it out. I think that's something that on one hand you look at that and you're like, it's a little bit dangerous. You might lose some time. But at the same time, it's kind of there. We don't like Max Verstappen wasn't going to sit there behind with his teammate and not try and move around the outside when it
Mhm.
wasn't working on the inside. You know what I mean? Like that kind of
Yeah.
thing I think is what you need from your driver if you want to have a championship fight.
100. Yeah. 100%. I think Kimmy, she's also new to racing. Like some of these moves, she might just be testing the waters to see if he can get away with them.
Yeah.
A little bit.
He's testing
I
the
don't know.
bounds of the track in an F1 car. Yeah. I mean, part of it is that, and part of it is there was a re really good comment on the broadcast about driving that car. He's out there and they don't really know. You're not doing head-to-head racing. Obviously, the sprint gives you a little bit, but they're not sitting there. They can go in the simulator as much as they want. They can drive in free practice. You don't know how easy a move is going to be until
Mhm.
you're on the track going against someone. And amazingly, like we saw 30 laps of them doing that. We saw like a lot of opportunities, and you could
Yeah.
see the development of what he was thinking. The sprint he goes for that move on the outside of turn one. He clearly wasn't going for that in the race. He was waiting to get on the inside, or he was waiting to be able to get fully past going into the braking zone. And then in the race into the Wall of Champions, he was thinking about going to the outside and getting by because George was taking the inside. Tried to stay on the outside, didn't work. And so you saw that development in his thought process on how to get by. And it was
Yeah.
aided by a few lockups going to the zone from Russell, and then Kimi had one to let Russell back through. But it was interesting to see the development of his thought as a rookie. I think that's really mature and something that you might not expect from him.
And I think also it's a testament to like whenever you get these long battles, you can really see like how they develop as through it kind of
Mhm.
as you're mentioning, but you don't get that with just like, one pass, maybe two.
Yes.
Um, you need long battles for that to really develop and you to really be able to get a sense of the driver's head. I thought it was really interesting. Um, I want to move along kind of, and we can talk about the Wall of Champions a little bit because Max Verstappen almost hit it trying to defend from Lewis Hamilton. Um, that that was a nice battle as well, honestly.
Yeah,
Um,
that was really, and that was one where I think that it's something that I've kind of been missing from Lewis. Not necessarily the battle itself as well, but he really did chase down Max over about 15, 20 laps. And that's something that I haven't really seen from him a lot in a Ferrari uniform. He did it in his last race in Mercedes on George Russell in Abu Dhabi, where he just chased him down for about 20 laps. But it
yeah,
was really a consistent performance. He was mowing through, lapped cars to really hunt him down. And I think that was something super encouraging. And then you got to the actual battle, which, like you said, was pretty spectacular.
yeah.
And even though it felt like he had better pace, Max is never going to let him through. And I think it's interesting to see too. 2024, I felt like watching. That was in Hungary in 2024. That's when they had a big battle. Max was being super aggressive, ended up crashing into
Oh,
Lewis essentially. I
yeah.
didn't jump in there. No one DNF, but since then, I really feel like these two have been very, very clean when racing each other.
Yes. Yep.
And there's this understanding of, to me, with Max last year as well, when he was fighting for that championship, he's in a position where he says, I've proven my worth. I've proven who I am. Like he's just enjoying himself out there to an extent, or he's trying to
Mhm.
enjoy himself as opposed to,
Yeah.
going in hard nosed for all this. Same thing with Lewis. I think, Lewis, they both came out of that battle and said, wow, it was a really enjoyable battle. And it
Yeah.
really makes for good watching because it was the same thing with Charles and Lewis earlier this year. But it feels like those two are just, you just sit back and watch two greats go at it.
Yeah. 100%. I think whenever you can come out of fights without like a major crash, but like a serious battle, and you can say this exact same thing to the Kimmy and Russell fight earlier. It's just like, wow, that is like what makes this sport so great is battles like this. And
Hmm.
but it really is seeing like two guys like Lewis and Max battle. It's always kind of awesome. Especially you always think about their battle in 2021. That was just like, so hard and you had crashes. But then whenever you see them
Hmm.
in a way mature throughout the years, it's really it was fun to see. And speaking of a Red Bull Ferrari battle, we also had Hadjar and Leclerc have a little scrap as well, with Hadjar making a little bit of a you could call it questionable, but not like over the
Yeah.
rails
I have
questionable, but he pushed Charles off.
I have
Yeah.
my
Let's hear
thoughts
your
about
thoughts.
this. Because on one hand, even as a Ferrari fan, I don't really feel like this was a penalty worthy thing, especially because Leclerc got passed shortly after before they had awarded a penalty. Obviously, you're not supposed to super consider that, but I think there is something to be said for that. I really just feel like the FIA was trying to kind of make a statement after the Behrman crash in Japan, where you
Mm,
had a situation where drivers coming in with more battery deployment, way higher speed, coming into this corner with someone in front of them who's moving a little bit slower, who's moving across the track. And in that situation, Japan, obviously, Ollie had a huge crash like that, and it wasn't exactly the same.
mm,
Um, you know, he wasn't getting defended against in that moment, but I think with Hadjar here, they were looking at the fact that Leclerc had way better pace that moment. And yes, the move was a little bit late across. I think when you look from Shaw's angle, I think it looks less bad. I think when you look from the broadcast angle from the front, it looks worse.
yeah.
And so with that, I just don't think it's a 10-second penalty, and I don't think it was worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think it was really a moment where the FIA needs to step in.
Yeah. I thought it was a little bit like sketchy whenever he pushed him onto the grass a bit earlier, actually before the turn. But 10
Hmm.
seconds feels a little bit harsh for the fact
Yeah.
that Leclerc got by him pretty quick. The Ferraris look better this week. And I know he had the mechanical failure, but I would say Russell's looked better this week than he did in previous weeks.
Yeah, I'd agree with
If you're
that.
able to look past, there was a lot of DNFs in this race. I think there was 7 or 8 actually, and um, I'm just I'm kind of curious if you have any thoughts on the Perez crash because it was kind of
Yeah.
comical, and you almost feel bad for him, but.
Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? You know what I mean? He's in a car. I think everyone kind of knows that. Um, but it's just one of those where I feel like it's just sign of the times. You look at that kind of thing, and if I'm driving there, I'm just, oh yeah, my suspension's gonna pop off. It's such a weird thing that they go back on the replay and they look at it and they just go, oh,
Yeah,
the
it's
suspension
funny.
broke off.
It gives me like a little bit of the vibes of like when like the I don't even know if it was Looney Tunes or whatever, but where they're just holding the steering wheel and the car just comes apart and they end up just sitting on the ground with the steering wheel in their hands. It's just like something so stupid. And but
Hmm.
anyways,
Yeah, and just to get to the other DNFs, I think there were five in the end. I just checked the.
oh
Um,
wow, wait, really? I thought there
hmm,
was one.
you're a little bit hyperbolic, but that's to effect. That's how we get views.
Oh, wow. I swear, whenever I
Um,
looked at the standings earlier, there was like it looked like there was
well, it's
seven.
Yeah, well, it's down to seven, up to 17 were DNFs. But
Ugh.
for Alex Albon, he had a DNF, killing my prediction, for points for him. And that one was down to none other than Oscar Piastri. And we can get into the McLaren strategy in 1 second. But this one was interesting because they didn't show it on the broadcast when it happened. And then they showed it 5 laps later in like a tiny box in the corner. And I actually I took issue with this because then later in the race, when Shaw and Hadjar were fighting, they put a box in the corner of the screen with Russell riding on a scooter back to the paddock. And it covered up the fight because the cars were in the top left. And I was sitting there, I was like, who's in charge of this? Like what who gives a shit? He's going back to the paddock, he's out of the race. Like it's
Dude,
not it's not MotoGP. I don't want to see two-wheelers in the screen.
yeah, I saw a thing and this is like we'll kind of advance the McLarens in a second, but I saw a thing on Twitter that said, Lando after crashing because he had to walk through the crowd. It was like, Lando
Hmm.
lost points, but he gained aura. And I was
Yeah,
just
no,
like,
that one was tough. The Russell one, he looks stupid because he's on a little scooter and he has to sit there with his arms around the steward's waist like it's a child going to school with his father or something like that.
he
I don't know.
also threw his headrest, which was pretty hilarious.
Oh
He
yeah, and
was
then he got fined
pissed
for it and had
after
to
that.
tweet his reply. Yeah.
Oh, that was
But
funny.
to the point to Albon's DNF, it was a very opportunistic move from Piastri and kind of just a sign of McLaren's day because let me tell you,
Let me
I have
tell you.
watched F1 for a fair amount of time. I am so glad that it's not Ferrari that's doing this bullshit that McLaren have done over the last year. And the easy point is Qatar last year. But this was such a silly mistake. You had both drivers on the radio saying that it did not feel like intermediate conditions. It felt like soft conditions. Maybe we should pit, maybe we should pit. Then you had a first formation lap aborted. Then at the end of the second formation lap, you're coming into the grid. Meanwhile, drivers are on the radio going around saying, maybe we should pit, maybe we should pit, maybe we should pit. You get a free pass because as you go into as you go into starting grid from the second formation lap, there's clearly a car still being wheeled away. And I don't know if maybe I'm just a genius, but it's pretty clear to me that that race start is going to get aborted. And if
Yeah.
you're getting
Yeah.
paid 5, 6 figures to manage an F1 team and you don't realize that they're not going to start a race with a car being pushed off the grid,
And you
I
should
don't
probably
know why you're
box.
there.
Yeah.
Exactly. They had free pass after free pass after free pass. It was like F1 was trying to give them a mulligan and they just didn't take it.
Yeah, that's as a golfer, that's like a sin. If your friend gives you a mulligan, and you're not taking it, man.
Yeah.
You're just makes no sense. It just uh I like the way the announcers put it. Like if you're a stroller, like a Cadillac in the back of the grid, like maybe that's a gamble to take. You're
Hmm.
3 and 4 on the grid. What are we doing?
Yeah, seriously.
Every person in the top 10 at least on sauce. It's
Well, and not to mention when you look back at the radio that was going between the drivers and the team, like the engineers sounded like, someone going into their like language exam. Like if you have your friend coming into your Spanish exam and they come out saying, dude, so easy. Don't worry. Like we know exactly what happened. And then you ask them what the first question was and what they said back, and they're like, oh, it was like, how do you say hi? And they go, oh, it was bonjour. Like, yeah, obviously you're fucked because they have no idea what's going on. Like it's just they didn't even have any semblance of an idea. They were so confident and just completely down the wrong path.
That might be the best thing you've said this entire podcast.
Well,
That's killer.
Um, I mean, it's crazy. And then you have one driver who starts ramming into, Williams because he can't get by quick enough, I guess. And your other driver whose engine explodes. Although I
It,
enjoyed that
it,
one. It's it's
it,
not a
it
good
was just
situation for a team.
it was a horrible day for McLaren. That's kind of the
Mhm.
bottom line. Just absolutely
Yes.
horrible. We kind of mentioned it in that McLaren thing. Lindblad didn't get off the start.
Yeah.
He just didn't move. He couldn't get into gear.
hmm Well, I
So
remember
just
sitting there
not.
watching the race and I was, the go lights on and we're sitting there, we're holding, we're holding, we're holding, and I go, "Wow, this is a very long hold." And I feel very smart for that because the timing. And then obviously they jump off the line and they do another formation lap, and like I said, that gave McLaren a chance, and they did not take it twice.
Yeah, I
Um,
think just the last thing I think we should mention, or maybe not last thing, but speaking of getting off the line, Antonelli looked better off the line, but
yeah,
still got passed by Lando because he was on those inters, which were warmer tires, but obviously ended up
hmm
not being the strategy. But we were
hmm
kind of talking like maybe it's just because he's a rookie and he's not doing well off the line. He visibly started better than Russell. So it seems like it might just be a car thing because Russell just started incredibly slow as well. Piastri dropped
yeah,
back instantly. Do you have any like opinion on that? Because we did mention this in our preview.
yeah. I think that Kimmy's just kind of showing maturity, and we talked about it with the fighting in the
Yeah.
race, and we talked about it with the fact that he's built out a 40-point championship lead. Um, Obviously, I think that I was wrong in the sense that I don't think he needs to get used to the car more. I think that Mercedes just struggles a little bit more, and he got it right this time. And I think there's reason to believe that he will continue to get it right as we go because he's looked strong. The interesting thing with the intermediates that I wanted to talk about is the McLaren decision was that they assumed that because it was, first of all, raining all day before the race, but also in the 50s, this is a very cold race comparatively. Usually we have air temperatures that are in the 70s and 80s. So this, it was like 57 degrees, something like that, super low. And
Mhm.
it's very hard to warm up your tires in that kind of weather. Um, and one of the things the intermediates have is they have grooves in the middle of them, so they heat up a lot quicker. But the other side of that is that once you are using them, they can overheat quicker as well. And
Mhm.
obviously, if there's rain on the ground, that helps to keep them cool and in the window, and gives them more grip in the wet. But once again, they will overheat. So the argument that McLaren essentially had was that because it was cold, because it was a little bit slick, maybe those intermediates would have an advantage. And off the line, when you're just doing a formation lap, yes, they are going to be warmer and more in the window than the slicks. But at the same time, as soon as you get racing, they kind of go off
They're gonna get hot soon
and they have
enough.
less grip. So it
It-
was just poor decision making from them. I think they
yeah.
I guess just completely misread it. It's something that you don't expect from, like you said, from one of the top teams because they don't have any reason to try and go different than those around them.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's just funny because it's not McLaren's first strategy blunder. Kind of this year, but like we go back to Qatar last year, and they basically single handedly almost screwed the championship for one of their drivers because they couldn't make a decision.
Yeah.
Um,
And,
so
it's worth mentioning that they have three DNSs this year. Um,
yeah, they're just it's been a brutal start to the year for them, but
yeah,
it's only
not
race
good. No.
five. Um,
And we have Monaco
so
coming up. Be
oh
quite
boy,
exciting.
that
Hopefully
will
we
be
have real
exciting.
racing.
Well, it'll be interesting this year with the new cars. Maybe it'll be a bit different. We'll see. I mean, who knows? It might
Yeah,
just be a
that's my
snooze
hope.
fest like it typically is. Well, let's hope. Qualifying will be electric as usual. Maybe the
Yep.
Ferraris will give it a go because they usually have a good time there.
Yep.
Ferraris up to
Charles
Tucker.
Leclerc.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
I kind of knew that one.
it was a great race, honestly. Like spectacular
Spectacular race,
race.
yeah.
Watch the highlights if you haven't, if you didn't get enough insight from this episode. And we will see you next
Which I don't know
week.
how you wouldn't get enough insight from this episode
Yeah, because
because we
we're
covered every single
geniuses.
base. Well,
Yep.
yeah. I put child genius in there just to keep him honest, but yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Mhm.
Anyways, we will see you next week for our Monaco preview, which should be a fun one. Big race for the Ferraris and Tucker. So we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.